How's everybody doing so far? All good? So now we're going to move to the wine pairing portion of the evening, and for great food like this, what Tony's putting together, definitely need a great wine to go along with it. And I selected 4 different wines to go along with the 2 dishes. And the principle, what we're going to see today, is essentially one wine that's more a classic approach, classic type of pairing, more regional type of interpretation in terms of the pairing itself, which I'll explain makes a lot of sense. And then there's a second alternate pairing to the same dish that has to do with, in one case will be international New World example, and then in the white wine realm it's going to be something totally different from what we expect. And the first wine you have is a Rufino. And Rufino is a very classic producer in Tuscany. And a lot of the Tuscan producers, what's the major region in Tuscany? Anybody know? Chianti. Chianti and Chianti Classicos, and Brunello, also very important. Brunello Montalcino, very important. But it's red wine. So a lot of the producers of Tuscany from a red wine production, they have properties in Umbria. And Umbria is just south of Tuscany. But Umbria in itself, there are certain areas within Umbria that tends to be much more suitable for white wine production, particularly those on a little bit higher elevation portion. And this wine comes from a small town called Orvieto. And Orvieto is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city. Anybody had of Orvieto before? You've been there. It's Orvieto. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. Extremely beautiful town. It's between Florence and Rome. And it's one of the areas that, the great thing about Italian wine altogether is that they're made to really pair with their food. It's something that really, the wines are not intended to be anything, particularly from the white wine realm. These are wines that are really extremely food friendly in that perspective. And Orvieto represents that food friendly realm. Actually, it's one of those things that we have lost a little bit from a wine appreciation perspective, the food friendly quality aspect of it. Anybody knows what our food-friendly criteria is for a wine? Just for fun. Anyone want to throw out food-friendly wine criteria? What makes a wine food-friendly?
I don't know if this is the right question, but I know white wines for fish, red wines for meat.
Yep, that has changed to some extent. But overall, when I talk about food-friendly wines, what does that mean in essence? Pairs well with food, so there's a level of affinity with food that, particularly the most important thing, that it does not overpower the food. That's what you want. You want wines that does not overpower the food. The whole principle of wine and food pairing is that the wine will enhance the food, will make the food taste better, and on the opposite way, the same thing. The food will enhance the wine and make the wine taste better. It's a principle of synergy. You put 1 plus 1 together, and the sum is greater than the parts on its own. That's what wine and food pairing is all about. Wine and food pairing can be very technical. We can go into a lot of detail from the components, acid and bitterness and structure and sweetness, all the things that kind of how the chefs put together a dish. It's about balance ultimately, and that's how I see it. Wine for me is like another component, another ingredient that's incorporated into the dish. But also it can be seen in another perspective. It's a matter of more about, it can be an element of the moment and what fits and what you like and a subjective component that goes along with that. But what makes wine food friendly is, one, a lower alcohol component. Higher alcohol wines tend to clash with a lot of food preparations. And unfortunately today, what we're seeing in the wine world, the tendency is towards higher alcohol. There's a lot of things that has to do with that. Better viticultural practices, for example, climate change, for example. All these elements are contributing to more sugar in the grapes that translate into high alcohol. But overall, when you have wines that have that moderate to low level alcohol, they tend to go better with food. The other thing is oak, the essence of oak. And particularly when we talk about white wines that have an essence in terms of particularly new oak influence, tends to go very, very well with food. And the other key component is acid. I don't know how many of you appreciate that component, but personally myself, I consider myself an acid freak in that regard. I like my white wines to be bright, brilliant, and zesty in terms of the acidity component, because maybe on its own, for some people, it can be a little bit too on the bright side, a little bit too acidic, but with the right food, it just makes the magic. It's like putting a little bit of lemon juice on top of your preparation, where it just pops out all the flavor profiles of the food, and also pops out the flavor profiles of the wine in itself. So for me, those are kind of core criteria. And that's what a white wine from Italy brings. It's not a flashy wine, to be honest. White wines from Italy, particularly Orvieto, is not a flashy wine, outspoken. It's a very humble wine that goes extremely well with food. And the price point also is very indicative of that. And also goes along with the premise that it's intended to be enjoyed with the table without a lot of fireworks along with that. But with the right food, the right moment, the right occasion, it can create a lot of magic. And that's what we have here. The other distinctive thing about Orvieto is indigenous grape varietals. And the thing is that we're living in a world saturated by international grapes such as Chardonnay, right? Sauvignon Blanc, for example, and all these other grapes that we tend to see over more and more and so around the world. The refreshing thing about this wine, it brings something totally different. For those of you already that, yes, I know my Chardonnay, I know my Sauvignon Blanc, I know my Riesling, but I want something a little bit different, something a little bit more unique, a little bit more distinctive character, then the Orvieto brings that because they use indigenous varietals from Italy. There's over 1,000 different varietals indigenous to Italy. And this one particularly presents 4 of them combined here. And there's the main variety is called Grechetto. There's a 50% Grechetto along with that. Then there's another blend of Trebbiano and Procanico and Caniolo that's incorporated into that. But again, the key feature is the resulting wine that comes out from this, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, is the element that it's not too full-bodied, has a kind of that medium-bodied perspective. In terms, body is how the wine feels on the palate. And then it has that acid component, that citrus, kind of lemon, lime, green apple character that comes along with it. A little bit of a floral character also that comes along with that. And just very clean on the palate. Now, if you put this wine with the food in itself, the intention of this wine was to go along with what? What the chef prepared? The salad. If you think about the salad, what about the salad that you think will be a great accompaniment for the Rufino? What would it be? Tomatoes? Tomatoes! Yes! The tomatoes. What about the tomatoes? What about the tomatoes? The acid. Exactly. So here we go in terms of, it seems technical, but really is, once you understand the components in the food, you understand the components in the wine, then really it's easy. Because then the options are really endless once you understand the principles in terms of pairing components. And the same way how you're thinking in terms of preparing your recipes at home. That's why following a recipe in itself is, from a home cook perspective, it's just a inspiration. Once you understand the fundamentals, then you can take that recipe and really make it your own. And the same thing in terms of wine and food pairings. Once you understand the core principles, then you can really delve into the immense opportunities out there in terms of wine and food pairing. So what about the acid? You have acid in the wine with acid in tomatoes. What happens to the acid then? What happens? Where does it go? Acid plus acid means heartburn. There you go. Very nice, very nice. Little logic along with that, but it does not. Because acid with acid, from a flavor perspective, you still will feel a heartburn. But from a flavor perspective, it cancels each other. So what it does, it brings out the sweetness, the sweet character from the tomatoes, and then it brings out all that fruit, the green apple, the peaches, the apricots, the pear, quality character of the Orvieto in itself. And that's essentially what you want in this particular wine, to be able to enhance that. Yes?
So when you had to share your acid plus acid,
yes.
So if you were to mix lime with another acid, what would produce a sweet taste? When you mix lime with another, what would produce a sweet taste?
It will diminish the acid perception, and then will bring the sweet, quality of the lime in itself. There's a sweet component of the lime in itself.
So acid, tomato and lime, I guess the acid and the tomato would bring...
Acid with acid will cancel each other and will bring the sweetness of both fruits. Absolutely, yeah. And it helps pop out all the flavors. And that's what you do with the Orvieto. It's a non-obtrusive wine. Doesn't that make sense? It's a wine not intended, again, to really get all the accolades, all the headlines, and be the star of the party. That's not the intention of the Orvieto. And from an Italian perspective, that's not the approach, the Italian approach. I don't know if any of you have the Italian heritage, but wine for the Italians is nothing extraordinary. It's just an everyday perspective, part of their lives, part of who they are, is part of their culture, part of like having salt and pepper at the table. So there's nothing extraordinary of it in that sense. So you want a wine that is seamless, a wine that has that fruit-friendly character that just does the job to go well with an array of different fruit products, doesn't compete, doesn't clash, and we can have fun while doing it.